Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Business Builders Podcast. We have another great guest with us today, Mr. Kyle Allen. Kyle's a wholesaler out of Arizona, real estate investor, but I don't want to give away his story. So, Kyle, can you let our viewers know who is Kyle Allen?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you guys. John and Helena are amazing people. We've been connected for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years or something like that. I've been able to do some business with them. They're amazing people. But a little bit about my story. I got started in the real estate investing journey at 16, working for a guy local in town named Doug Hopkins, and was passing out flyers, putting out signs, just kind of like that was like my first take of real estate. And like most people, I had no idea what I wanted to do, right? You're kind of young, you're in school. Most people are like, go to college. And so that's what I ended up doing. I went down to the University of Arizona, started studying school, and was like, this sucks, right? Like, I want to start making money. I've always been fascinated by it. I've always kind of had side hustles or jobs that I was doing just, even when I was in school. And so I decided I was going to start a marketing agency that was going to help real estate investors and agents to do their marketing. And so at first that started out with just a sign company where we put out, physical signs. So I was out there slaving away, putting out signs. I scaled that business, had 4 college friends helping me out to do that, and realized this is not how to make money, right? And then I started more learning about investing in real estate and actually doing deals, wholesaling. And that's kind of where my whole brain just started opening up, where I was like, I don't need money to do this, because I always thought I had to get rich from a business and then dump all that money into real estate. And then I could finally start that journey. And once I realized what wholesaling was, how to syndicate deals, how to raise money, my eyes just opened up, and I was like, this is the time to do it. And so I started jumping in, went 4 months, cold calling, motivated sellers before I got my first deal, which absolutely sucked. Ended up meeting the guy because the original person that had it under contract before me, because I was got my hopes up. I was so ready to go. They ended up backing out of the deal kind of last minute. I ended up picking up the deal, met the guy at Village Inn, and he goes, hey, my brother-in-law is an attorney. He's going to come and sit with us at Village Inn to look at this contract. And I'm like, oh gosh, I have the word assignment in there, and I'm stressed, and my armpits are all sweaty. Talking to this guy, I'm a young kid. I'm 19 or 20 years old at this time. And I'm like, dude, how is this guy going to believe me that I'm going to buy this house? I think it was for $160,000 or something like that too. So wasn't a crazy high end deal, but for $160,000, I knew I didn't have that in my bank account. And so I knew that I had buyers though that would take this property, and I already had a buyer that was ready to roll on it. Made 12 grand on that first deal, reinvested the money back into the business, kept scaling the company and, working on different things so that way I could just keep dumping money back in. Had a little bit of a bad taste of wholesaling for a little bit. I said, hey, I'm only going to flip houses, and kind of just put that on pause and realized, wow, I can run out of money really quick, really fast by flipping properties. And got back into wholesaling and realized how great of a business this was to provide other opportunities to accelerate the path that I wanted to go down of really investing in real estate, buying rental properties, fixing more properties up. And that this was a vehicle that I could take, and I could go make 7 figures, 8 figures a year wholesaling real estate, and go dump that money into more investing in real estate. Obviously get connected with great operators like you guys who find deals and, either purchase those deals from, other wholesalers, agents, direct to seller. I always tell people, I'm like, I don't care where the deal comes from. As long as it's a deal, it's a deal. And I think that's where a lot of people get hung up. They're like, my first deal needs to be direct to seller, or my first deal needs to be from an agent, or it needs to be from a wholesaler. It's like, just look at as many deals as you possibly can and get your hands on something. And that's what I always tell people, just get started somewhere. So that's kind of a little, evolution of, what I've been up to and kind of a little bit of my journey.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, the cold calling part of things, I'm sure you don't miss that right now, do you?
Sometimes, no. There's definitely times where, I think about it, because it's those hard things that most people aren't willing to do. And those are the things that separate you from everyone else. And, as much as it's not fun, it's something that you can really make a lot of money doing. And I think a lot of people, don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy it, but it's still something that you kind of have to do, and you build relationships that way, especially when no one in the business. Hop on the phone. I know you guys, Brent Daniels pretty well. All he talks about is talk to people. And that's the name of the game.
Yeah. So and in any industry, I think too.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly. Right. And so many people like overcomplicate. They're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to underwrite a house. I don't have cash. I don't have, a marketing budget. And it's like, just go talk to people. If you literally, I know guys, here in Arizona, they literally were at door to door sales doing solar or pest control. And they're like, hey, I've heard about this wholesaling real estate thing. They don't have any buyers. They don't have any knowledge about it. They're just knocking doors. They're like, hey, do you want to sell your house? They've been doing that forever. And they're just switching their pitch. And
Mm-hmm.
eventually, the first couple of doors you're going to hit, you're going to suck, but eventually you're going to get better at it. So even if you have no money, there's ways to always transition. Your skill set in any industry is always going to relate.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, from those times, that first 4 months of cold calling and then getting your first deal, how long after did it take you to start scaling what is now Basil Holdings?
Yeah, so got that first deal, hired two VAs because I hated cold calling that much to cold call for me. Um, and so I ran out of money because I basically didn't know how to delegate properly. So like most people, you're like, oh, hire more people, hire more people, hire more people. And I realized that wasn't always equating to more dollars. And one of my mentors at the time, he was like, hey, like, dude, like, what about you just increase the value per person that you're working with? Right. And so that looks like one of two ways. Like, one, how do I make more money from the customer that I'm already talking to? So that way I can maximize my yield per every deal. But also, two, how do I also make every person that works with me more money as well? So that way, like, it both, everyone rises on top of it. And with the
Mm-hmm.
VAs, they're amazing and they have so many use cases, especially like with what we do too, because we do a lot of marketing, a lot of online presence and stuff like that. The one thing I've always had a hard time with is having them on the phone. Right? You're talking to someone who's in distress, that needs someone that actually is going to help. And, there is sometimes that barrier that they have, right? Of human connection and being able to kind of relate to someone because of the language barrier or just, the cultural differences. And I think, a lot of consumers are just overwhelmed with, constantly being called from people from other countries trying to sell them stuff. And so we kind of went a different approach after we hired those cold callers because essentially I ran out of money and had to fire them because I wasn't getting any deals. And so I then went the approach where I was like, all right, I started posting on my social media. I was like, hey, who wants to, learn how to wholesale? I'll teach you how to do it all for free. You join my team. I'll, basically walk you through versus being like, hey, go to a paid mentorship or, go, just go pay someone to learn. I was like, hey, why don't I just teach people how to learn on my team and do what I've been doing? And so we started cold calling with just US based people that were all around and did kind of a virtual model for a little bit. And that worked pretty well. There was deals that obviously popped up that made some money, but the problem was is that we were just spread out way too far, and they were calling in so many different areas. And you guys know from being on the dispo side how important it is to have good relationships with buyers. So as much as I would love to build all these relationships across the country, it's hard to manage all of those too, and to build those relationships, and also to comp all those properties and all the logistics. So went back and I was like, all right, let's just like simplify this and just only worry about one market. And so that one market was, Maricopa County here in Arizona, and really just focused on that market here. And then also then I was like, all right, well, I know Pima County, which is where I did my first deal down in Tucson. And I was like, why don't I just do those two markets and really just concentrate my time there? And I started
Focus.
doing that. And guess what? My average deal cost went way more up. I was at like maybe 5 to 7 grand per deal because I was doing deals in Ohio, random parts of Florida, Indiana, and just like, just middle, like, 40, 50,000, $100,000 houses. I'm just like, like, this is not fun,
Yeah.
And versus I would, my first couple of deals in Maricopa County, I drove out to the house. I saw the house in person. I signed the seller, pen to paper across the table with them. And for me, that was a little bit more lively. And I just started like seeing that. And then I met my business partner right around 2020 that, I currently do Basil Holdings with now. And we really just set on a mission to like just dominate our market and really focus on that. And so we even let Pima County go. We were just like, dude, like who cares about any deals down there? We just only focused for about a year and a half, only in Maricopa County. Deal flow started going up like crazy. So much easier to sell deals. If we needed to take down the asset and actually fix and flip it or keep it as a rental, it made sense because we had boots on the grounds. We had construction. We knew the property. We can go walk it, physically manage it, whatever we needed to do. And so that really helped out, just dialing all of our attention into that one market. And so at that time, it was really just me and him. It was just us together. And, when I started, doing that and it was just us, it felt like it was small and there was 1,000 things to always do.
Mhm.
But I always had visions of building the company a little bit bigger, even though I knew when I was going to build it, it was going to sacrifice how much money I was making. Because when you bring on new people, you obviously have to pay them, right? I'd love to have everyone just work for free, but that's just not the reality of it. And so you're having to teach people, you're having to give them commissions on deals that you're really doing with them, and eating that where you're like, dude, I'm still very involved. But eventually that's going to, start coming a little bit more and more easier, where that rep is going to be able to do it on their own, and go the distance without you, right? So that way you're not like having to hold their hand every way through it. And so that was a big, learning lesson for me, is like focus on that one market, because I was trying to spread myself way too thin, way too fast. And by no means did I have the resources to do it either. So
Yeah, and that's what we found too. Like when you focus and you go deep instead of wide, like you have so much more. Basically, just the deal flow like doubles. The amount of money you make each month just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and the amount of deals you're able to do. Like you think you could get more deals done if you're nationwide, right? And you
totally.
wind up doing like no deals. Yeah, because I when I first started, I was a again nationwide wholesaler, and I use quotes because in your beginning, if you're a nationwide wholesaler, you're not really a wholesaler. You're not really doing any deals because you don't know the market, you don't know the players. And once I focused on just doing Florida and agents, things started skyrocketing, and then that's how Helena and I met from being in the same market, and things have just we haven't looked back since.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And it just is a testament to that focusing on one area. Because it's like realistically, you can't juggle so many areas at once. And like, even for me, it's one of those things, like I have someone on my team that like specifically focuses on Florida. You guys know Cody. He's a
Yep.
beast. He knows Florida better than I know Florida. You know what I mean? And it's like, without having someone like that can really delegate their time to it, there's no way I would have been able to expand to Florida, to obviously get connected with you guys, and to, to collaborate and do deals. So even when you start growing and you start doing more deals, it's like, well, you really need that extra person to then scale that market for you, versus trying to be like, oh, well, I'm crushing in Arizona, I'm going to just take my eyes off of this that's making me a ton of
Mm-hmm.
money, to go start a new market that you're inherently always going to eat shit on, right? Like any new market we've ever opened, we've always ate shit every single time. It doesn't matter what market, you're always going to eat, just that learning lesson of like, oh, you're going to get the crappier deal sent to you at first. You're going to not understand where buyers are really buying at, or what construction cost is running in that new market.
Mm-hmm.
It's the name of the game. And eventually people see you sticking around. You obviously get better and better deals. You also know what is a deal and what's not a deal, because you've went through that, that pain barrier. And then you just, learn from it and you adapt.
Yeah, we definitely want to ask more questions regarding how you expand into different market. But let's talk about the Arizona market first. So from nationwide to focus on Arizona, and I don't know if you let those people who are virtually calling go and you hire from the scratch, or like what's your hiring process? What role do you hire first, and what role do you hire next one for Arizona
Yeah.
market? And then we can talk about when we go into the new market, what is your hiring process?
Yeah. So when I first, started really focusing on Arizona is when I met Lucas. And so basically, like me and Lucas, I was on Dispo, he was on Act. And that's kind of like the methodology that we kind of have even with today's new markets, is that you kind of want a 1-to-1 ratio, or maybe a little bit like 2-to-1 ratio with them, depending on how good the Act person is and how good the Dispo person is. But it really is as simple as that. Like you can start a market with just two people and really get it going, because that one person is going to be focused on, wholesaler relationships, cash buyer relationships. The other one's going to be focused on agents and motivated sellers, and it's just going to be dialing for that. And it kind of keeps them both on it, because you both need to succeed. So it's kind of like the perfect buddy system in a way, that we've just found works. And we kind of usually have two people that are paired together, and then it almost naturally happens too, where they're kind of buddy in this market. They're fighting, they're doing deals together inside of that market. And so that's kind of the first things that we started doing. And then I brought on another acquisition guy afterwards. So that was another one, because I just felt like, hey, I could keep dispoing these deals. I was selling other deals for other wholesalers. I was like, we could increase our deal flow. I could still facilitate it all. And then it got to a point where we were probably doing anywhere from like 2 to 3 deals a week where I was needing to dispo them. And I just didn't have the time to truly sell 2 to 3 deals like head on and like do the process that I wanted to. Because at that time I was still trying to do the marketing. I was still running the business, doing dispo on top of it, and just feeling like there was no time in the day for me to like be me. Like it was just selling, building, doing all that type of stuff, which I would never go back in time and change because it allowed me to learn a lot. But it was a stressful time because then you're like, all right, this is the pain point that I'm having. I'm not doing my job for the acquisition team. I need to bring someone on. So I ended up actually bringing 2 people on Dispo instead, and then kind of removing myself a little bit slowly. So they started going at it. They basically started right at the same time. I sent over all my leads. I kept some of my VIPs, but I gave them the bulk amount of the leads so that way they could really focus on building those relationships. And then what I could do is I could just oversee and help them close deals. So if they had a buyer that just walked it, I would help to negotiate the deal and make sure that we got the highest price from that buyer versus just being like, yeah, good luck, John, figure it out. Give me a call when he's ready to sign a contract. It's like, I really was still involved and still paying them out on the commissions as they sold the deal completely by themselves. And then eventually it got to the point where they're like, yeah, they're picking up the negotiation skills. They understand how it works. And then on the act side, we just kept scaling that out and trying to figure out like that right threshold. And so we then, truly tried to find like 1 to maybe 3 people per market for acquisitions and just really kind of hit those relationships up because there's always going to be people that, are going to tell you no. There's always going to be that type of group, but it's sometimes about the right timing. And so I might have called you, Helena, and then, John calls you 2 weeks later and you're in a lot better of a mood and you happen to come across this weird deal and you do a deal together because you guys meshed at that right time versus you just said, screw that guy, Kyle, that guy sucks. He's cold calling me. Right. And so it just is a matter of timing on some of these things. And so I always like kind of do like a 2-to-1 ratio with like act to dispo and then kind of, try to scale it out that way. And then based off of, deal flow and lead flow, we might increase or decrease in some of those. And sometimes we've had to move people that were on act over to dispo because personalities didn't mesh. I had someone on my team that was for me for 6 months, no deals. And I'm like sitting there, I'm like, he's doing everything he can possibly do. He's making the calls. He's showing up every day. His personality just wasn't that shark mentality to go get deals at a discounted price, but he's great at selling deals very high. You know what I mean? And so I realized that, and I realized he had a better personality for dispo, switched him over, started making money instantly, started getting success, and now is still with me today, almost 2 years later. So it's just crazy, like some of those things where you have someone, that is just not the right personality type. And so I really kind of see different salespeople and I kind of know who's going to fit better now. So I kind of can eliminate some of that, but there's still some times where it's like, let's alternate. Let's see if you're better on this other side and go from there.
Yeah, you hit on so many good points that I have questions for. So let's tackle the easy one first. Act and Dispo, they're both salespeople, but I guess they have different profile. So from your perspective, what kind of sales profile is better for Act? What is better for Dispo? And when you're identifying that person is better for which role, like what kind of questions do you ask to help you make that decision?
I think like as far as like personality types, I'll start with like Dispo. Dispo, I think, is a little bit more customer focused, a little bit more like customer oriented. So like, maybe it's that restaurant worker, maybe it's, someone that has done like kind of more like inbound customer service type of sales where it's like not necessarily always outbound closing, that type of stuff. They still need to have some level of like, sales negotiation skills, but it might be just a little bit different. And so I kind of think about it as like, obviously if they're in the store already and they're shopping, they're talking to you about a deal, Helena, more than likely they're interested in the deal. It's about how do I service you to make sure that you like the company and you like us and you trust us versus feeling like I'm trying to snake you out of every deal and I'm trying to take your money and move on to the next deal and screw you. And I think that's like the personality type that you're looking for. But then on the opposite side, that personality type, that guy that's this slick salesman that, is going to, go through and push through 1,000 different times and, is not going to take no for an answer is great for acquisition. Right. But that person that keeps pushing that buyer and keeps pushing that buyer just turns that buyer away even more. And so I found, sometimes when you're that too hard on like the dispo side with trying to hard pitch and hard close, you end up pushing people away versus having that deal naturally flow and feel like the buyer is actually winning, right? Because that's the whole goal. You want the buyer to feel like they're winning in that deal, even if you're making a crazy assignment fee, or maybe you're making $5,000 on the assignment fee. It doesn't matter. You want that buyer to feel like they're winning every single time. And so on the acquisition side, I think a little bit more is like, hey, are they pretty resilient? Do they have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder? Do they kind of have like that mindset that they're better than everyone else, right? And for me, that's kind of that person. I'm like, they're going to go in there and they're going to keep badgering you until you're like, all right, fine. Like, let's just do the deal. Or that they're going to get a contract accepted and then they're going to realize, hey, I might have this a little bit too high, but I'm not going to let this go and just give up. I'm going to keep this dogfight going and try to get the deal for a little bit cheaper. So that way I can get paid. Because if I don't get this deal done, I don't make any money, because we only do it based off of commission only. So there's no like, oh, hey, like, continue to, just keep missing out on deals and canceling contracts and like you have no repercussions. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
you just don't win if you do that. And they have that chip on their shoulder, they want to win.
So you want someone having that chip on the shoulder and feel like they are better than other people.
For acquisitions.
For ag.
Yeah, for
that's
acquisition.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
That's the profile or personality you are looking for. But I guess to an extent, right? They cannot be too arrogant or overconfident to the level.
Yeah, there's a level of we've had people in here that definitely have been the extreme of that. You know,
right?
I mean?
Yeah, there's a fine line.
Either, because then the rest of the team doesn't vibe with them. The rest of the team doesn't like them.
Right.
Especially we have an office in Tempe. So, I mean, pretty much every single one of our people come in every day. So it's like, if that guy's just being an arrogant asshole to everyone in the office, that's not going to fly either. So.
Right. So initially, before you know all that, like what kind of questions do you ask during the interview to identify those qualities?
Yeah, one of my favorite questions for the acquisition guys, or just in general, is, Helena, would you consider yourself an A+ player?
Yeah.
The way you answer that question is going to give me a really good read on you if you think you're better than him.
Okay.
Or if you maybe have some preconceived notions, you're like, dude, I don't really know if I am better than you or anyone else. And then they're doubting themselves. So it also, too, is a confidence boost to see where their self-confidence is. Because if they have super low self-confidence, that's going to be a lot harder to train. And as soon as they get on the phones, their confidence isn't going to even go below what they're at right now. Right? I mean, there's no sales job that your confidence gets boosted by, especially when you're brand new. Like, you're going to eat shit and you're not going to get any deals, and you're going to call people and they're going to tell you got a horrible deal on your hands if you're on acquisitions or dispo, or your offers are way too low. And so that's a good reader for that one. And then I always ask them is like, okay, like the follow-up question, depending on whatever they say. Well, can you give me an example of when you were an A+ player then?
When you were an A+ player. Okay.
Yeah. And then they're going to go back to a time where they were at that height of the high and they were living and they were doing this. And that might be from sports. That might be from, a previous job. That might be, a charity that they were involved in. Just the wide variety of different things. Maybe that's even at school. They're like, dude, I was a 4.0 student. I busted my ass. I wasn't the smartest kid in the class, but I made sure I did everything I possibly could to hit that 4.0. And so it just depends on whatever it is. But I usually also, too, find a lot of the acquisition guys a little less analytical, a little bit more about, just they'll run through the brick wall and just keep going versus, that person that's like, oh, should I call this one? You know what I mean? They're just like, they just pick up the phone and they just call. And like, that's where we usually will throw people on the phone, like pretty much instantly after we like interview them, to just get a feel of like, are they that person that's just going to run through the brick wall? Or are they going to be like, what do I have to say again? Can we write a whole script out? Can we do this? And it's like, no, just like call. Like, here's the basic framework. Don't worry about it if you fuck it up. Who cares about it? Just show me that you're willing to just roll with the punches. And for me, that also is like about how teachable they are. Are they willing to take advice? Are they willing to sit down and listen? And those are some of the things that I look for. I'm trying to think about some other good questions that I've had for some of the people.
Do you also notice that your acquisitions people are not as good in the CRM and as
Yeah, they're
on
not
top of
very detail oriented. They don't like
yeah.
taking notes. They're like, oh, the call's recorded. It's fine. And I'm like, yeah, it's a 30-minute phone call. You know what I mean? I'm like,
Yeah.
what part did you forget about the roof and the AC and was it block construction, whatever it might be, you know what I mean? So definitely a little less organized. And I find that on both sides really of the top salespeople in our company, they definitely are typically less organized. They're less, like trying to button out everything up and make it very pretty. They just are like, go, 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 get on the phone, talk to as many people. At any time, you're always going to forget stuff. You're never going to be perfect. But their mentality is, hey, if I just keep doing this, it's going to eventually hit and someone's going to come back.
How do you mitigate that? Like, do you have somebody that's in charge of like the CRM and follow process, making sure things aren't slipping through the cracks?
Yeah. So we have like a COO that we hired just recently, maybe about like 2 months ago. And so he's been kind of helping to kind of keep tabs on some of those and KPIs. But a lot of it, at the end of the day, there's always going to be stuff that falls through the cracks. There's always going to be. And so I try not to beat them up on certain things because there's certain things that aren't that important. And then there's stuff that is, right? And at the end of the day, like their job is to really vet it out and see how serious it is. So like indirectly, they're only hurting themselves and they're not winning if they're doing, the bad things too. And so typically if you keep performing, John, on my team and you keep doing well, I'm not going to harass you on some of the small stuff and just be like, you really need to log those notes, even though you were the top sales guy last month. You know what I mean? It's like, I think that's where a lot of sales managers they don't get it because they weren't maybe always in that sales role and they don't
Right.
realize how chaotic life is sometimes and how much they have to be on the fly and on the go. But if you're not performing, it's a different story. It's like, hey, like these things are only going to help you to perform. And I find people work a little bit different than others. So like, I'm not going to be like, oh, you have to work this way. You have to do this or else you're not going to get leads, because some of those best people are just not going to do those things because they think it's a waste of time because they have a great memory and they know that they look at your name on the CRM system. They remember all the calls. They remember what they talked about. They remember what that situation was, why they had it, they were going through a divorce or not, versus going back and going, who was John again? What did we talk about? If they have that type of memory, it's like, hey, dude, like spark note it for yourself. Give yourself a little bit,
Yeah.
just a head start. The good news is with, how technology is going, you could just download the call, throw it into ChatGPT and go, hey, give me a quick summary of this. And you could save yourself from having to do that. So that's some of the stuff that we've been telling them to do, or it's like, hey, all these calls are recorded. Just throw it in there, give it a summary, add that to the notes so you can read a 30-second highlight of it.
So you mentioned like you throw them on the phone almost like immediately. Is that after you told them we're going to hire you moving forward, or is part of the interview process?
So our interview process, I'm going to be honest with you, is super willy-nilly, right? Like at the end of the day, I think a lot of it is like getting someone to see if they're even a good fit. So we kind of call it like, hey, after the interview, we're going to just do like a quick little test run and we're going to just see how you feel, right? You're going to watch what we do. We're going to kind of just go through that process. We'll role play with them a little bit. And so technically they're not a part of the company yet at that time.
Got it.
And
Okay.
they give us a good idea of where they're at. So that way I know, John might be telling me he's the best sales guy and he's been doing it for 10 years, but I role play with him and, he's stuttering over every other word. He's super nervous to role play with me. I'm like, dude, have you really been selling for 10 years? Like, what were you selling? And even if they're like, oh, I was selling this, I go, well, then sell me that instead. Screw the houses, screw all that stuff. Go through the sales process with that. So I'll go through if they don't feel comfortable with like talking about real estate. So like, I don't know the lingo, whatever. I'm like, well, then tell me what you were selling. And then that allows me to understand like what's going on, because then they don't care what the content is, like as far as like what they're trying to pitch. It's how are they pitching it? How are they overcoming the objections? Are they even overcoming the objections? Do they call them out beforehand? Like, you know what I mean? The things that most people would do if they're a good salesperson will come naturally, and you'll kind of see that. Even if I don't know the product, like there was this guy, he was what was it was like a weird type of annuity or something like that. I had no idea what the annuity was. And they had him go through the sales pitch of the annuity. And I'm like, pitch, I don't know shit about this. What, if I'm a buyer, what would you have to tell me to make a decision today? And he went through the pitch. It was okay. He didn't really tackle the objections very well. And I realized he wasn't really that passionate about selling either. And so that kind of gives me a read if they actually truly do like selling, because, as much as some people, treat it just like a job, and you don't want those people. You want someone that treats it like a profession.
I think that's really important, right? Because as a business owner, also people have like a control freak. They want to control every single process to make sure it's exactly what they want to happen. But you have the tolerance for the individuality in the team. You can do the thing the way you prefer as long as you're producing the result. So having that flexibility and the tolerance for error, like if they are hitting the performance, even though they're missing something, you're also okay with that. It's really important for some business owner who are having the control freak to overcome. But also sounds like if they are doing their thing and it's working, you don't really come and correct them. You only come and correct them if it's not working. Either it's the notes or the follow-ups and all that. Is that correct?
Yeah. And there will be like things that will be like, hey, you do this, you can probably, increase your revenue by 20%. You do this, to the ones that are performing, but 100%, you don't want to try to overcorrect, over perfection it. Cause like there's things that me, you, and John all do way differently, but get pretty similar outcomes. But maybe John's process is a little bit faster. And to John, he kind of looks at both of us. He goes, you guys are taking an extra like 10 minutes to do this, but for me and you, that extra 10 minutes makes us to fully comprehend it to get to that same result. And so I think just everyone has different processing. And like, I think it goes back to like when I was in school, like I was not a good student by any means. And I needed to learn multiple different ways, and I needed to get like my hands dirty and like do the example problems for math, right? Like when the teacher would just explain it, like I'm like, what did you say? Like, you know what I mean? Like show me on this deal, like show me on this like exact equation what I had to do and what I need to change. And then I followed the next one. I follow the next one. I need to like physically do stuff to learn. And other people are very like, they just hear it and go. I'm not that person. And so I've tried to get different types of what they learn. And I go, what's your preferred learning method and how do you want to learn? And that's why I have like a whiteboard. So some people like, I need to draw everything out, and that's okay. Cause that's how I like to learn. And that's how I like to teach too. With the people that are not performing, you usually find trends that you'll see that will go. One of the biggest performer indicators that we always look at is calls. So you guys are obviously in the business. What you do today is typically paying you out 30 days, 60 days, 90 days down the road. And that's pretty true for most businesses unless you're very low ticket. And so for a lot of these guys, what they're doing today is going to help them down the road. And so if they stop calling today, we start seeing that lag 30 days, 60 days later. And so that's the indicator that it's going worse. And so if I can stop those, because everyone gets busy, everyone has a lot of things that's going on. And one of the things that I like to tweak is when you have a lot of deal flow going on, let's say we have an acquisition guy, they got 5 deals under contract. That's a lot to manage for them too, that they're still dealing with, maybe with the dispo company to get access to the property to get it sold. They're still dealing with maybe when the deal's in escrow, just miscellaneous issues that are popping up. And for that person, it's like, well, it's really easy to be sucked away from making your calls because you already got all these 5 deals. And for them, they don't want those deals to fall out of contract, which I understand, but it doesn't leave you the right to just walk away from your prospecting, because as soon as those deals, you're only making your process longer before you get that next deal. And so for a lot of that, that's where we start seeing. And so we try to make those small little tweaks as we see them, and just kind of, manage on a fly, because it's like, it's easy to be like, oh, Kyle, like, the reason why my call volume's down today, cause I got 5 deals in escrow. Like I got a lot going on. And these guys keep bugging me trying to get into this deal, and the agent's being a freaking pain in the butt. You know what I mean? And they're having to work through some of these issues. And, for me, I'm like, hey, like, then try to prospect, just a little bit, tell them to try to figure out some of these deals, like without you, and like, not to say that you want those deals to fall apart, but you want to be banking and building that bank for reserves down the road.
So not like really hiring someone to handle the process for them. You just coach them to have the other party who are looking for them to be more self-dependent. Have you thought about maybe hire someone like a firefighter or something, just handle all the transaction in-house?
Yeah, we have someone that kind of helps with some of the TC stuff. So like a lot of it is off of their plate, but there's just stuff that, at the end of the day that they need to communicate out. And that's where it kind of gets, they have that relationship already, and they obviously, or that person keeps calling them, whether it's an agent, wholesaler, seller, they have the relationship with Helena, so they're not going to start talking to this TC. We find even that transition off of it has been a little bit difficult, something that we're still trying to work on.
Got it.
Yeah, we have the same thing. Like we'll tell them like, hey, talk, especially with wholesalers, we're like, hey, talk to Jennifer on our team. She's our TC, just like anything escrow there. And almost always I get a call or a text like, hey man, I just want to see, is the buyer good to go? And my only response now is just call Jennifer. I don't know. Right.
Yeah.
That's I'm like, if you want to get the answer, like call her. Like I got a million other things I'm doing right now. Like there's a reason we have the TC and that we're paying for the TC on this exact deal. So she'll have all the information. Please call her and she'll give me a summary at the end of the day. So now like we've kind of, one of the processes we've like started implementing because we've seen that happen is with agents or wholesalers or even now with buyers too, the TC will call each point of contact and let them know that they're handling the transaction. And if anybody asks me a question, even if I know the answer, I'm not telling them. I'm just like, call Jennifer.
Yeah.
Because now I want people to understand, especially if they're doing repeat business with us, like, all right, let me not ask John anymore. Let me start asking Jennifer whenever we're in escrow.
Yeah. And it's also taking
worked
longer by not doing the right process. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, dude, if I just reached out to Jennifer, I didn't have to wait 30 minutes to John text me back to reach out to Jennifer. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's really good. And now I want to talk more about like your act to dispo ratio. So every market you go into is pretty much 2 act to 1 dispo. Do you have act first, so they start performing, locking up contracts, then you'll hire a dispo? Because if you hire them at the same time and act take 2-3 month pipeline to have the first contract or whatever, your dispo person is sitting there having no deals to sell. So what's the sequence for that?
Yeah, so our dispo reps kind of sell in a couple locations. And so when they start, they'll be like, hey, you're going to be mostly focused in this market. But obviously, we're working on getting you more deal flow there. So if I have no deals, you're right. I don't have anything to sell. I got nothing to even just talking to buyers and being like, hey, Helena, I saw you're buying in Jacksonville. And you're going to be like, well, the first question in your mouth, oh, do you got a deal? And when you say no, they're instantly like, okay, call me when you got a deal. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have time for it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I get those calls too. I'm like, so you got something? They're like, no, I just wanted to like see what your buy box is and really get to know you. And I'm like, cool, this is what I buy. This is what I do. Like, if you got nothing for me, like, chances are we might never talk again. And this is what you want. Right. Yep. And there's a good chance that that's just what it is. Right. And so we kind of give them also too on dispo the, kind of the act process of where they can go talk to wholesalers like you guys and get deals from you. And it's more just like, hey, let's now shop those out to those buyers. And so at least they have something to work on and they're not working on just direct deals. And that's how a lot of the times we open these new markets up is with JV relationships, because then we get a feel of where other wholesalers are locking them up. We get a feel of what buyers are paying for. I don't have to worry about putting up EMD or figuring out which title company to use because you guys are going to tell me which title company you guys are using on the deal. And I kind of figure a lot of those things out beforehand when I open up those new markets. And then that way I don't have to go in there. The only downside of that is then the buyers go, oh, you guys are not direct on these deals, especially if they're well. So pros and cons, but eventually one of those buyers, we will get a direct deal in front of them. And then they'll start paying more attention to our deals and start working with us on that process. So it's kind of an evolution where dispo, I think, is more important to kind of build that market up first off, because then you can also tell the acquisition person, and this is what we've done really well. It's like, hey, I got this great buyer. His name's John. He's looking for X, Y, and Z. This is what he's buying. And then that acquisition person has a criteria that actually matches a buyer. And we'll start seeking out those. And I think it's really important for like those new acquisitions and disposition person to have their reticular activating system looking for deals just like that. So that way they're not wasting time on some wonky house that no one wants and that is in a weird location. And you're kind of like, dude, like, is this a deal? Like, there's no comps. You know what I mean? Like, you're not looking for like this weird, odd deal that like you finally get sent you something that looks ugly. You're looking for something very specific, and then it makes that process really streamlined, to sell off those deals in those, those areas to get that proof of concept.
So pretty much you hire all 3, if possible, around the same time. And when the act is still picking up on their volume, you have your dispo focus on adding buyers and also reaching out to wholesaler and work on those deals and building buyer list by using other people's deals. And once your act pick up the volume, they can shift the focus working on the direct deals more. That's the process.
Exactly. Yep.
Got
And
it.
then eventually
Okay.
you get more on those. And also too, there's only so many buyers to prospect in most markets. Obviously you go to some of the big markets like Miami, Tampa, even parts of, Jacksonville and Orlando, there's a ton of buyers, right? But there's really only like, maybe let's call it maybe 100 to, 400 people per market, like a big market like those that are like the big kahunas, you know what I mean? That do the most amount of deals. It's very similar to like the Pareto effect of like how real estate agents, like 80% of them, do the most amount of business. And then, the other 20% do like next to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's really like that where you have a big, a small group that does the big bulk of all of the deals. And then you have obviously just those miscellaneous kind of ones that kind of fill in the gaps. And so there's not too much to be building on that side always, because you can kind of get a gist in who is a player and who's not a player based off of kind of, deal flow and stuff like that, at least on the buyer side.
Right. Based off of deal flow, you mean like the tax record, you can see how much they're buying.
Yeah,
Is that
tax
how?
records, just previous volume. I mean, I was on a phone with someone, I don't even need to look up the tax records. If he's like, yeah, I just bought 6 flips last week. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Like, I don't need to, I kind of have an idea that this guy's pretty serious and that he's going to be a good buyer. And he's like, yeah, we pick up usually maybe 6 to 10 every week. That's what we do.
That's wild. How can they?
Yeah, you just want to feed that person.
Yeah, 100%. And super specific buy box only, in Palm Beach County, won't touch anywhere else around there. And we weren't originally calling him on Palm Beach County. I can tell you that. We were calling him somewhere else. And he's
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, I used to do deals there, and just, said screw it. It just was diluting. People are all over the place. Projects were all over the place. We're just really defining to this market.
Do you
First thing
think
I did, I told my act guy that's closer to Palm Beach County, yo, find me something for this guy. He's going to be a beast for us. He's going to be, what we call a whale, right? He's going to be a good buyer.
Yep.
do you find those kind of buyers who are running at scale? Because it's interesting because theoretically they should be able to pay more because they are so efficient and have the economy of scale. But I also notice they tend to ask for a better discount because they're such a a big player. They get all the best deals in the area. What have you noticed?
Yeah, 100% accurate. The biggest buyers always have the best deal flow, right? Because everyone in town knows them already, and so they're good on feeding volume deals too. And like, especially if it's like a certain criteria, like there's a couple here in Phoenix that their criteria is if it's 1980s or newer, single family, needs to have a 2-car garage. I can pump deals their way, but I know I'm not going to make an extra killing on every deal, but I know that
Yeah,
they're always going to perform and they're always going to continue buying. And for
right.
me, having reassurance sometimes on a deal versus making an extra two, three, four, $5,000 is just not worth it. You know what I mean? Like we've gone, and then all the headaches that come with it, and how much time does that pull away from other deal flow on some stuff? And I was always the guy that was like, max out every deal, like sell every deal for like every dollar that we possibly can. And the more that we've done, year to date, we're like 122 deals or something like that already. The more that we've kept doing more volume, the more headaches that keep coming up. And then we're like, well, where are the deals that like we make good profit margins on, but there's zero headaches? And how do we keep funneling deals that way to just minimize risk? Because you guys know, I mean, this business, you might put something in escrow. It doesn't mean it's closing until that money's hit my account. I don't count it at all. And so that's a big thing for us is, having that reassurance, because for them, it's reputation now, right? If you're
Hmm.
that big of a buyer in a market, it's reputation. If I tell you that I'm going to do something and I don't do it, chances are you're going to tell other people in town too that, yo, Kyle's told me this, he didn't do this. And, I would just be careful. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
for
for
sure.
them, that's how they get those good deals, is by performing and being, a person of their word.
Yeah.
It's really real estate's a small world. Like, I mean, once one name gets out there, you start hearing it more and more, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's a bad player in the game. Let's not be
Yeah.
associated with that person
The bad
anymore.
players get weeded out real fast.
Real fast.
Yeah. So another question on the Ag and Dispo, you mentioned like they kind of like buddy working together, especially as a new hire. So do you have that dispo working exclusively on the deals brought in from those two act people, and they kind of like basically working directly together in terms of discussing deals and where the number needs to be at? So there is no sales manager on act or dispo side in the middle. They kind of just work directly.
Yeah, they work directly. Yeah.
So
But
okay.
dispo is not assigned specific deals, right? It's kind of like if you're in the
Yeah.
Florida market, you're working any deal in Florida.
Correct. Yeah.
So what
So
if
we
that
kind of
deal is not from those two acts, it's from a different act?
say that question one more time. Sorry, I just want to make
So
sure.
what if, let's say, all in Florida and a deal is from a different act? Can that dispo still work on that, or that dispo can only work on the deals brought in by the two act that they are working together with?
Yeah. Yeah, the dispo guys can work on any deal. So
Okay.
they're not tied to John if he's my act guy. They're not tied together. They just might end up doing more deals together is kind of what it usually ends up happening. But they
Mm-hmm.
necessarily are not always tied because there's always going to be a buyer that has a better relationship with someone else or that they found first and that they've, been building that relationship up. And for us, it's also too kind of like a risk mitigation where I
Mm-hmm.
have all my buyers kind of spread out in an area like Tampa with four people. If one person leaves, I kind of can pick up the slack a little bit more and reallocate those leads versus having that one guy have all of Tampa and taking all of that book of business away.
Right.
And
So
plus, if he's tied to one guy, if that one guy is having a slow month, then so is that dispo when he could have sold 4 or 5 other deals
yeah.
because he's still selling other deals.
Or, the reality of it is, hey, they have to go on vacation sometimes. They have to
Yeah.
have some time. You know what I mean? Like, like one of my guys, one of my top sales guys on Dispo was gone for a month in Japan. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it was like we had to reallocate leads, when he was gone for that month. And it's like I didn't want him thinking about, oh, I got to close deals with this, crazy time difference and trying to worry about this. And it's like, no, like just go off, have fun, come back. Your leads will still be here. People will still doing it. If any of the other guys close it, you get a percentage from those because obviously they're your deals and your leads. It's going to be less than what you typically get, but at least you're still going to make some money off of those if one of your buyers end up purchasing.
Got it. So pretty much the deals brought in by the act, every single dispo person can work on that. And as a dispo, you can work on anyone else deals. It's just organically, maybe they work together more just because they come in together. They're like betting buddy together. So how do you set
Yeah.
the expectation? Because let's say if there are certain deals is not as good as other deals, right? And if the person that you are supposed to work closer with constantly working on other people's deals because those deals are better, how would those act people feel about that?
I mean, at the end of the day, they know if they have a bad deal. You know what I mean? They're not oblivious to it too. And so if the feedback comes back, I mean, and it's just not good or they miss something, I mean, it's a learning lesson for them. And I mean, at the end of the day, like a good deal, you guys know a good deal will sell, right? And a true good dispo person will do the best that they possibly can to sell every deal, but not every deal is, and not every deal we're going to have the buyer for at that right price or the right timing, and that's just the name of the game. And it's how the market works. If they, can't handle that, they shouldn't be in the business and they shouldn't stay with us and they should go find a different job that, is probably going to have some issues. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of just what we do. We kind of just call it a reality check for them. We're like, hey, dude, like you could say that the dispo team dropped the ball. You can say this and that, but like, here's the results and here's actually what they did. And so really you just didn't do a good job of locking up this deal at the right price. And maybe they took a shot on it too, which they do, right? They're like, hey, I think it's a little bit higher than what I'd like to pay for it, but I'm going to take the shot, see if it's worthwhile, and at least see if maybe I could work a reduction if needed in a last resort. Because we have someone solid. Maybe it was right at the price that I thought I could sell it at, and they wanted me to go 20K higher. Well, when all of the feedback comes back at that, our contract price is where the offers are at. It's close enough that we might be able to work a 5K reduction, a 10K, a 20K reduction to make that assignment fee too.
Yeah,
Also,
taking the shots are huge, man.
Yeah.
I remember the most lucrative shot we ever took. There was this house that was listed, and like there was really no comps, and it was listed at like 1.6. I'm like, I doubt that they're gonna accept this. So I was like, just offer 1.1, like just do it. And my act did, and we got the contract accepted. And even then, we were like, yeah, we're 50-50 selling this thing. and we wound up selling that thing, and that was like a $100,000 deal just from a shot. You know what I mean? Just like taking a shot. So like, I mean, you miss all the shots, 100% shots you don't take. So taking shots are very important. You know, is if there's like maybe a 5% chance, yeah, maybe not. But like if you have like maybe like a 25-30% chance,
Yeah, it's worth it.
take
It's
it.
always worth a shot, you know? And I think a lot of people don't take them, and that's where they, I even see it with our act team, the less shots they take, the more I'm like, hey, like, what's going on? At
Yeah.
least give guys a shot to see if they can bring you back something. Because there's been plenty of deals, like you said, that we're like, yeah, it's a coin toss and it's a $20,000-$30,000 assignment fee. And it's like,
Yep.
dude, why didn't we take that shot on the other one?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a 5K fee. It's still something, right? You're going
Or
to make
you learn a lot, about the area and the underwriting.
Mm-hmm.
So all the communication back and forth, like taking a shot and buyer feedback, go back retreat, happen between the AC and dispo directly. It doesn't go through you or Lucas and then go to the. Okay.
We have it all go through Slack. So we have like a Slack channel that basically posts all the deals and stuff like that. And within the threads, all of the feedback is given on that deal. So if John, offers on one of our properties, I'm going to have that logged in there that John offered 560 for this deal. And that way we all see it. And then also too, all of the other dispo guys can see it. So that way they know, oh, hey, like John offered 560 on that deal. Like, I have a buyer that's maybe similar to John because I know John bought this other one that my buyer missed out on. You know what I mean? And so the more that they kind of see that too, and then they also know, how close the deal is, to being there. So that kind of is open communication. We kind of think about it as like decentralized. Anyone can look at that information, see it, and also use it for the underwriting purposes. So if you're another acquisition guy that's maybe working that same market, you kind of know where buyers are buying at, percentages and stuff like that too.
Okay, that's really good. And I want to touch on this for a little bit more. So you mentioned every time making buyer feel like they win and also sell at as much as possible, although lots of time it's not the highest price, but try to sell the maximum value. So how do you make it both happen?
Yeah, I mean it's an art. Every deal is a little bit different. At the end of the day, like the buyer's always going to be doing their own due diligence. They're going to underwrite the deal. And there's an emotional side of it too, where sometimes they don't want to miss out on a deal. So if it's a direct deal and it just came in and, Helena, you offered me in 15 minutes from this deal and it's a little bit below asking price, I'm probably going to go like, hey, I mean, it's only been like 15 minutes since we sent this deal out. Like, I don't want you to miss out on this deal. And so we kind of use that as like, hey, like, I want you to come up and win on this deal. But like, the reality of it is I'm not taking $20,000 under after 15 minutes. Chances that we sell it at asking are pretty high, and I want you to win on this deal. Let's talk through the numbers real fast and let's see how much money you're expected to make on this profit, seeing the numbers that you think. Okay, you think the ARV is a little bit less than mine? I agree with you. Let's run the numbers. How much do you pay in commissions? Oh, you're a realtor yourself? Cool, you save some money there, pay the brokerage whatever you need to pay. Let's work through the numbers together. And then I'm like, well, I mean, I think $60,000 is a pretty good profit on this deal, Helena. I mean, if you don't think that, I could bet you someone else will think that. You know what I mean? And then they make their own decision on the deal. So if they don't want to come up, I mean, Cody hit me up. He's like, dude, repeat buyer. This guy is going to take this deal. It's $15,000 underneath asking price. I go, dude, we've sent it out for like an hour. Tell him to take the deal at asking price and come back to me and we'll go from there. The guy comes back after 2-minute call. I'll take it at asking. You know what I mean? What I mean? Like everyone wants a deal, like at the end of the day, but it's like it's reality. But if that deal would have sat for another 2 days, yeah, I probably would be going and taking that asking price because he is a repeat buyer. And maybe if there was another offer with someone random that we had no idea about that owns nothing, that we can't find anything on, they have no online presence, I can't see if they're a real player or not. Am I going to roll the dice for an extra $5,000? Not really, especially if I have this guy that's pretty solid. For me, it has to be enough of a difference to make sense to then sell it. For that, usually is anywhere from like $10,000 to maybe $15,000, where the buyer is that much higher, then I'm going to roll the dice on it and make sure that it's good to go. So.
Yeah, because always, in wholesaling, another thing is chicken in hand is always better. Will you be like kind of concerned if you are waiting for a higher offer for 2 days, and then when you come back to the previous buyer who offered lower than asking, who offered within the first 15 minutes, for example. But at that point, they bought something else, but something else came up, and they cannot, proceed with the offer anymore.
Yeah, I think it just depends on how hot the deal is. I mean, when you do enough deals, you really have a good read on it. Like if you're like,
Hmm.
hey, this one's worth holding out on because, especially in a big metro area, like chances are that there is a buyer for this deal. It's just whether or not that they've seen it, that they've had the time to underwrite it, that they've been able to, process the deal and want to move forward.
Right.
And the fact is, maybe I do lose that buyer if I wait 2 more days. But if I know that I'm going to still sell it within that day, yeah, I'm going to take that shot and not take that offer. And like
Got it.
you kind of just know, like right out the get go, like if something's hot, like you'll start seeing the phones will start melting because the deal, people be calling on the deal left and right when you send out that marketing, you send out, those text messages and emails and stuff like that. Like if you don't have the phone ringing and things not hot, yeah, you might want to consider taking that offer. So.
Yeah. So how do you balance, let's say, when you take shot and the number is too high, and you know the number is too high when you send it out? And a lot of times you have to take shots consistently because the market is competitive. So every single deal you send out is like 20, 30K higher. Do you think it will kind of like contaminate the relationship with the buyer because you think, okay, Kyle only send overpriced deals and stop looking at your deals? Because that's one of my concern in terms of taking shot and sending out deals. The number is too high.
Yeah, I literally just had this conversation with someone yesterday, so I'm glad you asked that question. In my opinion, I look at deals all the time from people that just don't work out from what I'm looking that I personally buy. I know that John's not going to have every deal that matches what I have. Even with agents, I mean, like, even if you're working with a realtor, they're not going to bring you the exact deal that you're looking for every time. And I'm kind of glad sometimes that they don't bring me what I'm looking for every time, because then it makes a deal look even better, in my opinion. Because I know that I'm going to have to sort through everything. Because, like, it's unrealistic expectations that Helena's only going to bring me deals that make me $100,000. And if that's the case, Helena's eventually going to get smart enough to know I could sell it to John and put an extra $20,000 in her pocket to then eventually make more money, and he makes 80 still, and then eventually you're going to get even smarter and go, okay, I could sell it to this other guy and make $60,000, and then I could put another 40,000 difference between the first person into my pocket too. It's just unrealistic expectations that I think a lot of wholesalers have for themselves in the business, is to make sure every deal is going to work. And it's like at the end of the day, there's some deals that we've sold to buyers that had different use cases than what the underwriting would have been for, right? Because if you
Mm-hmm.
underwrite everything like, that's, a fix and flip, you're using like one tool in your tool belt. What about the person that doesn't give a shit about anything? They just want some equity and they just want a deal that they can put their grandmother in, that we've sold them and they're a cash buyer on that. What if it's
Hmm.
just a deal that they're looking for a vacation home and they don't really care about the numbers, right? Like there's all different sorts of buyers out there. And I think the more that you limit yourself, you limit your buyers list. And then those buyers end up not wanting to do business with you because they don't see anything from you. And so there's a double-edged sword of it on both sides if you restrict it too much. And then if you don't restrict it at all and you just post anything, but you also will always build up that new buyers list by trying out things and seeing what's going to work. And so,
Yep.
in my opinion, I think it's always worth a shot to see, because it's real market feedback. If everyone tells me, "Oh, it's not a good deal," so be it. I lost a couple $100 in marketing, big whoop. If I bring a banger tomorrow, you're going to be like, "No way, I'm not going to buy that deal." Yeah, okay, you have that mindset, then yeah, you miss out on the banger, and then John buys it from me, and then he tells you about the deal or I post about it, and then you're like, dude, maybe he does have good deals. You know what I mean? Right? Like
Yeah.
you're never gonna have that expectation, and I think a lot of people do, and they restrict their deal flow too much, and they're losing money by doing that on the dispo side, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a great point. Cool. So we're coming to the end of the podcast. And Kyle, if people wants to do deals with you and your team, I know you are in many, many different markets. So what markets are you in? How can people reach out to you and do business with your company?
Yeah, so our main markets are Arizona, Colorado, Florida. We've expanded to Georgia, Nevada, and then also California too as well. So if you guys have deals in any of those areas, let's connect. Let's do some business. Happy to help you. I've done deals with people when it's their first deal, or I've done deals with people that have done thousands of deals. So if you come to me, I'm not going to be like, oh, you're a newbie. Yeah, get out of here, So, or if you're, someone that's experienced, we definitely know how you're going to work and how you're going to want to operate. So we definitely have some great resources and stuff that we can help you with. You can either go to our website. We have two different websites. You can either go to basilholdings.com or you can go to thehoffergroup.com. One's the acquisition side, one's the disposition side. So that way, if you guys are a cash buyer looking for properties, go to the Hoffer Group. And then if you're looking to sell a deal and get connected with us on the acquisition team, go to Basil Holdings.
Okay, cool. You got it, you guys. Definitely reach out to them. They are a powerhouse. They sell deals, get deals all the time. So you definitely want to connect with them. All right, thank you everyone for this episode. We're very happy to have Kyle here and learn more about his wholesaling journey. Definitely me and John, we learned a lot. We do deals together, but just hearing his process of hiring and expanding into new market is really, really eye-opening. So thank you again, Kyle, for coming up here.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for, all the things that you guys do, and, love that you guys are putting this podcast on. Excited to obviously watch it back and, learn from some of your other guests that joined too.
Cool. All right.
Really appreciate it, Kyle.
All right.
See you
Thanks
next time.
so much.
Bye.
Take care.